So, there's a single step inside every life coaching session that separates coaches who get rebooked from coaches who get ghosted. And most new coaches blow right past it without even realizing. Here's how to run a life coaching session that actually delivers results. Follow a 6-step flow from building rapport through creating an action plan, and close with next steps your client commits to out loud. In this video, I'll walk you through the exact session template I use on every single call. That includes the one step in the middle that most coaches skip, and why skipping it is the reason so many clients don't come back. So, here's what we're covering. First, the 3 foundation steps that set the stage before any real coaching happens. Then the 3 steps where the actual coaching takes place, and where most new coaches rush through the part that matters most. After that, what to do before and after the session to make everything land harder. But there's a piece in the middle of this framework, step 4, that completely changed how my clients show up, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. Let's start with the first 3 steps, because these create the container for everything that follows. Step 1 is building rapport, not small talk about the weather. I mean, creating a genuine connection in the first 2 minutes of the call. If this is your first session with someone, thank them for trusting you with this and make it clear you're a team. Something like, I'm here to help you figure this out, and we're going to work through it together. But if you already know this client, reference something specific from last time, not just how's it going, but something like, last time you mentioned you were struggling to set boundaries at work. How has that been going? That one sentence tells your client you are paying attention, and it builds trust faster than any icebreaker. Step 2 is accountability, and this is where a lot of coaches feel uncomfortable. Spend 5 to 10 minutes at the top of every session checking in on the action steps from last time. Did they follow through? If they did, acknowledge it. If they didn't, don't let it slide. Ask what got in the way. Were they stuck? Did it feel too big? The questions I always come back to are simple. How did that action step go? Did you run into any obstacles? What worked and what didn't? This isn't about making anyone feel bad. It's about building the pattern that coaching produces real action, not just good conversations. Now, step 3 is where you figure out what to actually coach on today. And this is where a lot of new coaches go wrong. By asking something too vague, like, so what do you want to talk about today? That's way too open. Instead, try, what would make this a powerful conversation for you today? Or, what's the one thing that if we made progress on it right now would change your entire week? That gets your client focused fast. Once they've named the focus, agree on it together so you're both clear on where the session is heading. So now you've built rapport, you've checked in on accountability, and you've locked in the focus for this life coaching session. Most coaches think the real work starts here, but it already started the moment you held them accountable in step 2. That accountability piece is doing more heavy lifting than most coaches realize. That was the setup. Now here's where it gets interesting, because steps 4 through 6 are the actual coaching, and this is where your skill as a coach either shows up or doesn't. Step 4 is reframing your client's challenges. And I want to be really clear about this because this is the step most new coaches blow right past. They hear the problem and they jump straight to giving advice or strategies. But the reframe is the whole game. Your client comes to you and says, I can't get clients, or I'm stuck, or I don't know what I'm doing. And they've been telling themselves that story on repeat for weeks. Your job is to help them see it differently before you try to fix anything. So instead of jumping to solutions, slow down. Ask where that belief came from. Help them separate the facts from the meaning they've attached to the facts. Maybe they say, I've been coaching for 6 months and only have 2 clients, so I'm clearly not cut out for this. The fact is 2 clients in 6 months. The story they've layered on top is, I'm not cut out for this. Those are 2 completely different things. And when you help someone untangle the fact from the story, something shifts. They get calmer, they get clearer, and the solutions they come up with on their own end up being 10 times better than anything you could have handed them. If heavy emotions come up during this step, and they will, don't rush past them. Acknowledge what your client is feeling and give them a moment to sit with it. That pause, that willingness to hold space, is one of the most valuable things you can offer as a life coach. I learned this the hard way, by the way. My first year coaching, I was so focused on being helpful that I'd skip right to strategies the moment someone shared something hard. My sessions looked productive on paper, but my clients weren't transforming. Learning to slow down at the reframe changed everything for me. Stay with me, because step 5 is where you turn that reframe into forward motion. Step 5 is walking your client through strategies. But here's the key. You're not handing them a playbook. You're guiding them to find their own path forward. The best question I've found for this is, how have you handled something similar before? And what worked then? Because most of the time, your client already has the tools to handle their situation. They just can't see those tools because they're too close to the problem. Other questions that work well here. What else could you try that you haven't considered? Is there someone in your life who's navigated something like this? What strengths could you bring to this situation? You can offer your own suggestions too, but always after they've had a chance to come up with ideas first. You want your client to walk away thinking, I figured this out, not, you told me what to do. That's the difference between a coach and a consultant. Now remember what I said at the beginning, that there's one step that determines whether clients rebook or ghost? This is what I was talking about. When you nail the reframe in step 4 and then let your client drive the strategy conversation in step 5, they feel ownership over their progress. They don't just have a plan, they have their plan. And that feeling of ownership is the difference between a client who follows through and one who disappears after 3 sessions. The coaches who rush the reframe lose clients. The coaches who slow down there keep them for months. Step 6 is building the action plan, and this needs to be specific. Not I'll work on my mindset this week, but something like I'll journal for 10 minutes every morning before I check email, and I'll reach out to 2 potential clients by Friday. The key questions are, what's the smallest step you can take right now? What specifically will you commit to? And by when? Watch for hesitation. If your client seems unsure, the goal is probably too big. Scale it down until they can say yes with confidence. A small step they actually take beats an ambitious plan they ignore, every time. I set all my coaching packages up on Paperbell, and one thing I really like is that each package gets its own page. Clients can see exactly what they're signing up for, book their sessions, and pay, all in one spot. That makes it easy for them to commit to a multi-session package instead of one-off calls, which means more continuity for the actual coaching work. So you've got the 6-step flow. But the session itself is only part of the equation. What you do before and after matters just as much. Before the session, if this is a brand new client, send them an intake form. I use Paperbell for my intake forms because they're connected directly to the client's booking, so I never have to chase anyone down for answers. Give your client a deadline, at least 24 hours before the call. That way, you'll have real material to work with instead of spending the first half of the session just getting to know them. For returning clients, review your notes from previous sessions. What action steps did they commit to? What patterns are you starting to notice? That 5 minutes of prep makes you look like the most attentive coach they've ever worked with. After the session, take 5 minutes and ask yourself 3 questions. The first is, what did I learn about this client that I didn't know before? The second is, what roadblocks might they hit before we talk again? And the third is, what can I do to help them get past those? Then send a follow-up email summarizing the action steps you agreed on and any resources you think would help. If you're coaching with packages, this follow-up builds incredible goodwill because your client feels supported between sessions. And that means they're more likely to do the work. And one more thing, the structure doesn't have to be rigid. Sometimes a client walks in with something urgent and you need to throw the plan out and just be present. That's good coaching. But having the structure means you always know how to get back on track when the conversation drifts. So there it is. 6 steps for a life coaching session that actually works: rapport, accountability, focus, reframe, strategies, action plan. The reframe in the middle is the piece I mentioned at the very beginning, the step most coaches skip. And it's the step that turns a decent session into one that changes your client's life. Start using this template on your next call and let it guide you until the flow feels natural. If you want a simple way to manage your sessions, packages, intake forms, and payments all in one place, I use Paperbell for my entire coaching practice. You can try it free with your first client. There's a link in the description.